We are Rogue Media Sports.
Have you ever brought your magic to Walt Disney World like, hey, we came to play? Did you tip your tiara to a Creole princess or get goofy officially? Step up like a boss and save the day? Or see what life's like under the tree of life? Did you? If you could. Would you? When we come through, it's true magic. 'Cause we came to play. Bring the magic at Walt Disney World Resort.
You haven't heard about the McCrispy yet? Well, then, you probably haven't heard the sweet silence after the first crispy bite either. Go try it for yourself to hear the best nut sound you've ever heard.
It is time for the Doomsday Podcast, taping in the aftermath of the Cowboys' 22-10 win over the Rams. And Ed Werder joining me as always. You'll hear from Glenn Stretch Smith. And just to refresh your memories, of course, Marable Homes, our presenting sponsor, family-owned custom home builder, building timeless classic homes in the Dallas area. And I'm watching some of these. There was one home that they're working on in Lake Highlands right now that is just unbelievable. If you want to find out more about them, marablehomes.com. That's MARABLE homes.com. Follow them on Twitter at marablehomes, or if you do Instagram like Ed's always posting on Instagram at Marable Homes. Also, that is their Instagram. Ed, it is, it's amazing that we sit here tonight. Cowboys improved to 4-1, and they're on a crash course now with the Eagles. That improved to 5-0 with some craziness at the end of that game against the Cardinals. And now this is going to restore what has always been, in recent years, has been the better rivalry in the NFC East, and it's come roaring back this season. Ed, hard to believe that we sit here with the Cowboys feeling like this and still don't have their starting quarterback, and yet 4-1. Who would have ever predicted such a thing?
Yeah, 4 weeks ago when the Cowboys scored 3 points at home, lost to the Bucs in their season opener. Dak Prescott, of course, lost for an unknown amount of time to a fractured thumb requiring surgery. Jerry Jones in the hallway outside the locker room admitting he wasn't sure about the quarterback depth chart and whether the front office had properly put this team together at the most important position in the NFL. And now they've won 4 straight, and Jerry's in Los Angeles talking about jewelry, getting jewelry for this football team. I mean, the Cowboys have won 4 straight games. They've stayed in contact with the only undefeated team in the NFL. That's the Eagles in the NFC East. And they've now beaten both of last year's Super Bowl teams, the Bengals with Joe Burrow and the Rams with Matthew Stafford. And they've done it all, as you suggested, with a backup quarterback. Cooper Rush wins his 5th consecutive start, 4th this season as Dak Prescott's replacement, and did it today just kind of trying to stay out of the way, which has become the new Mike McCarthy game plan. I mean, here's this offensive-minded head coach who won a Super Bowl in Green Bay and coached 2 Hall of Fame quarterbacks in Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers, and now this team's winning on defense and special teams, and the offensive contribution is not creating a turnover and pretty much running the football as often as possible. Cooper Rush today, for all the people who will say, we need to keep rolling with Cooper Rush today completed 10 passes for 102 yards. And the Cowboys won on the road against the defending Super Bowl champions. I just don't think Cooper Rush is the reason that this football team is winning. And I do think it is going to be fascinating when Dak Prescott does come back, potentially next week for that big showdown game against the Eagles, and I'll be there for that. Been already assigned by ESPN. Can they continue this formula when they have Dak Prescott playing quarterback? Dak Prescott's always been the featured attraction for the Cowboys since he became the starting quarterback, or at least since 2016, his rookie year. Then they probably lean more on the defense and the running game with Ezekiel Elliott. He was a complimentary player. But since then, he's really effectively been the star on this football team. And now we're seeing maybe this quarterback needs to do what Troy Aikman did back in the Super Bowl dynasty years. Let the defense and the running game be dominant and make the timely plays.
Yeah, and a guy you covered, Jimmy Johnson, said after the game today that the look of this with the running game and that defense brought back memories, an obvious reference to those 90s Cowboys teams. So it's always when Jimmy says something like that, there's a reverence and there's more gravitas, attached to that. So that was interesting to hear Jimmy say that after the game. All right, we've got a lot to discuss. Cowboys get a 22-10 victory on a neutral field. That's what it felt like. It is time for the Doomsday Podcast. Frito, please play the music. All right, and always fun to be with you guys. And this is, again, we didn't know what kind of season this was going to be. Looked like things were going to be headed in the wrong direction. And today, Ed, I joked about it a few moments ago. That was quite an atmosphere. It just sounded loud. They were revving up. The Rams had to practice a silent count this week, and then they were still kind of bothered. They really weren't efficient. And we'll start kind of on the defense because that's kind of where it got going. Now, as the week unfolds, we'll have to find out more about how Micah Parsons is with what appears to be a groin issue. But, Ed, a gutsy performance from him coming back after it looked like, if you looked at his body language, then he was on the bike. He didn't, I would have guessed we might not have seen him again the rest of the game. And then sure enough, in a passing situation, he was out on the field. I would say today, Ed, sometimes I come away from these games thinking there's no way the Micah Parsons legend can grow anymore, and I think it actually did grow today, and really one of the gutsiest performances, if not the gutsiest, of his young career.
Well, and I think going out to the start of this week and prepping for the game, talk to Micah Parsons, and I think he was clearly motivated to share the field for the first time with the guy he considers the greatest player on defense in the NFL right now, and that's three-time Defensive Player of the Year, Aaron Donald. And Micah Parsons comes away from this game matching Donald with 2 sacks. Micah had a team-high 9 quarterback pressures. The Cowboys had 20 pressures in a game for the second time in 3 games. He had 9 of them. He now also had the 2 sacks, which I alluded to, one of which at the end was a clincher strip sack fumble to seal the game. He now leads the NFL in pressures as an individual with 24. This guy is rushing the passer. Now, TJ Watt's out, injured, but this guy's, got more pressures than Aaron Donald. He's got more pressures than Myles Garrett, than Joey Bosa, than Nick Bosa. I don't think anybody expected this kind of productivity when the Cowboys drafted him, when they were, disappointed that the 2 corners that they had targeted, J.C. Horn and Pat Surtain, had gone immediately in front of their scheduled pick. But he has been just phenomenal. He's got, 3 games already where he's had 2 or more sacks this season. I think only DeMarcus Ware has done that in the course of the first 5 games of the season. But even bigger than that, you look at the way this game unfolded. I alluded to Cooper Rush. Cooper Rush, when he takes his first snap, the defense has already scored a touchdown. The special teams, Dorrance Armstrong, has already blocked a punt and set up a field goal. He's out there, or I guess they had already scored the touchdown, but they're on the Ram 20 because of the blocked punt, and they get a field goal. Now they're up 10-0. He's playing from in front virtually the entire way in every one of these games. And the defense, I said this. I said the best move Mike McCarthy's made in 3 Dallas seasons was hiring Dan Quinn. As hard as that was for him to fire Mike Nolan after 1 season, a friend of his. One of the best moves Jerry Jones has made in 33 years as Cowboys owner and general manager was doing whatever it took this offseason to retain Dan Quinn for year 2 in this defense. And, I think as a point of context, people have to remember that when Quinn was hired, he inherited a defense that had just allowed the most points in Cowboys history, 29.5 points a game. They led the NFL in takeaways and defensive touchdowns last season. Now they're among the best in the league. Micah Parsons says they are the best in the league. They're allowing 14 points a game. That's half what they allowed 2 years ago. And whether they'll continue it over the course of the season remains to be seen. But you would think that the opportunity for them to be more dominant would exist more often once Dak Prescott comes back and the offense becomes more capable. I mean, the offense has only scored 7 touchdowns in 5 games.
Yeah.
Didn't they score that many points against Washington and Philadelphia in individual games last year?
Yes.
Pretty close to it, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Although it's just, it's like you don't want to mess with winning. And I think it's going to set up a really interesting, we'll get back into, what Dorrance Armstrong did today. They had that choice, of course. They could have signed Randy Gregory. That got away from them. And Dorrance Armstrong was kind of didn't get a lot of recognition when they went ahead and re-signed him. He's ended up being really good for them. Ed, I think this is going to be fascinating to see how they, and I know you'll be out at the Star all week to kind of monitor this, how they manage Dak Prescott in what is, and they can play it down, but it's an enormous early season. And the funny thing about the NFL is we're into the season now. You look up and you're like a quarter way through the season. So it means a lot. There's a team, in the Eagles, it's 5-0. Cowboys are 4-1. And Dak Prescott told reporters after the game that every day, basically something along the lines of every day, big things are happening. Like he's seeing significant improvement. And so I think there will be a push from Dak to play this week, knowing how big a game it is. There'll also be some debate this week on the defense, like even the way Kellen Moore's calling games. It's really working extremely well. Are they going up and down the field, the offense? No. Do they need to right now? No. They're kicking field goals, being opportunistic, and letting the defense do the heavy lifting. I think this is going to be really, really interesting to see, if Dak is ready for this game. What is your gut, and also just kind of as you check with all your sources after a game like this, are you thinking it's like 50-50 that he plays, or more like 30-70 that he plays?
Well, he said after the game that he's day-to-day, that he's going to get checked by the doctors again on Tuesday as he did last week. Last week I was out there on Thursday, and Dak Prescott began doing some ball handling drills. And when he started that, he was working with the rehab group with Britt Brown, the director of rehabilitation, who supervised his return from that devastating injury in 2020, the fractured leg and ankle. And he was working with him. He threw down the plastic brace that he had been wearing, and he was actually just had a light tape job on his right hand as he was, doing different conditioning drills while holding a football in his right hand. Sometimes he had it tucked like a running back would, and sometimes he was just holding it loose in his right hand. How well he felt he was gripping that ball, I don't know. He has not practiced. He's not thrown in practice. He's done some light tossing very occasionally. So I think he's got a long way to go. And the other part of it is, a lot of what they're doing on offense that's succeeding with the play action passing game requires the quarterback to be under center. Is he going to be able to be under center and take a snap or take 20 snaps under center with the ball hitting against his thumb that hard this early in the recovery process? One of the interesting things Jerry Jones said after the game last week was the bone healing's not as big an issue because of the way they did the repair. They put a plate and screws in, and so the bone healing is not as important as it would have been had they just casted it and waited for it to heal on its own. It's been fortified with the hardware that was surgically implanted. But I don't know. You just have to hope that, he's an egoless guy like I think he is, and that winning's the most important thing to him. And rather than put his team at risk as much as he might want to play in a game of this magnitude this week against the Eagles, that he'd show good judgment. But I think he's going to have to prove that he can protect the football, that he can throw it accurately, all the things that, Jerry and Mike McCarthy have laid out there as the requirements of him being deemed functional enough to return to play.
Yeah, and it's not the worst thing in the world for this to kind of hang over this game as the Eagles try to figure out which quarterback they'll be preparing for, because the Cowboys probably, as you said, are a little more dynamic with Dak back there. They're going to try a few more things. But again, they found this recipe. And today, Ed, staying on offense for a little bit, running game over 160 yards, Pollard with a 57-yard. I mean, it's a nice combination. I mean, the downside from the running standpoint was that Pollard got his quarterback's head almost knocked off, because on a blitz by Ramsey, he just didn't see it, and he kind of stepped up and he just missed the block. And that was right about the time that on Fox they were questioning, wait, why is Pollard not in there more? If he just, he had this huge carry, and then that a little bit answered their question.
Right.
These two backs, and, Zeke still, I think, runs hard, and certainly it can be effective, but you saw the biggest difference. I mean, one guy ran for 77 yards, one guy ran for 86 yards. Is that one guy is a total home run hitter, and the other guy is just a real valuable, picks up the blitz and runs hard, but he's not a breakaway threat. So, but today, I mean, I think they used them it worked extremely well.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things, Matt, is that since Rush became the starter, the offense has been able to counter when opponents score. And the one time the Rams scored, on a big play and took the lead, the very next possession, Tony Pollard breaks the 47-yard touchdown run, and the Cowboys are, back out in front. That's 3 times this year that Rush has faced a deficit and immediately countered with a go-ahead touchdown. And yeah, I mean, they have found great roles for 2 players who, seem to work really well together, who respect one another, who allow the team to play to the strengths of each guy. I mean, Pollard has the Cowboys' 3 longest plays this season. And I thought it was a little interesting at the end of the Giants game 2 weeks ago that when they were trying to close out the Giants, it was Pollard in there in that situation in the 4-minute offense ahead of Zeke. But today Zeke was back in there. Obviously, he protects the football. He gets, all the tough yards inside, and they did get a couple of first downs, and Pollard played a role in that as well at the end of the game today. But yeah, I just don't think there's any reason to really change what they do, especially when, Zeke is so valuable. I remember when they drafted him instead of Jalen Ramsey, by the way, at number 4 in 2016, fourth overall with Ramsey still on the board. And part of the justification was that Zeke is the best running back they've ever seen without the ball in his hands. In other words, he will block. He is a great blitz pickup guy. He likes to be involved in that way. And it's, unlike Ramsey, you can throw away from a corner. With Zeke, you can't stop the quarterback from turning around and handing him the ball however many times you want to do it. They did it, really often early in his career, when he won 2 rushing championships, and that's never going to happen again, in my opinion. But I think they use them, extremely well. I just think it's going to be interesting to see. Mike McCarthy talked about in training camp, and you were there with me. He talked about, we're going to play to our defense. We're going to run the football. We're going to be more balanced. And I've heard him say that 1,000 times when I covered him in Green Bay, and it never happened. The Packers in his 13 years never were in the top 10 in rushing attempts. He's always played through the quarterback. And he didn't say that was going to change. He didn't say, I'm not playing through the quarterback anymore. He likes Dak Prescott, thinks he's capable of being an elite quarterback. That being said, I think he does recognize that there is value in only taking so many chances. There is value in the opposing defense expecting you to run the ball and then you throwing the football. Makes it easier. So maybe we've seen a different Mike McCarthy. He's had a little bit of an epiphany maybe since he saw what he faced last year against the 49ers, the best running team in the league. He only came away from that talking about how physical they were and how he wanted to be more physical. And that, that was a message and a philosophy that carried in as they went through the draft and the kind of players they picked. And now they're playing like a physical football team, and they're dominating on defense.
Yeah, it's it seems like a great recipe, and you and I've joked about it, but now it's come to reality. If they try to work Dak back in a game of this magnitude, and the Eagles have obviously been really, really good, and the Cowboys lose after this 4-game winning streak, and what is he, 5-0 for his career, it does set Dak up for some fallout. It sets the Cowboys up for some fallout. So the good news is, if they had done what we thought they were going to do, and we're sitting here at 2-3 or 1-4, it would be rush him back, do whatever, invent a brace for his thumb, do anything to get him back on the field, and they don't have to approach it that way. Now, just minutes ago, word coming out of Los Angeles, Dak being quoted saying, "I'm day by day. There's a lot of growth right now. We're uphill. Things are happening fast. Taking it day by day, when I can do more than the next day, we'll keep pushing like that." At this point, it's all about just gaining strength and comfortability, and that's happening more and more each day. Now, the good news is, Ed, he seems to be extremely, he's been there for Cooper Rush. Cooper Rush seems to not have much of an ego, realizes he's just sort of a caretaker, and is ready to turn it back over to Dak when Dak's ready. So this has worked out extremely well. And to your point from earlier, by the way, a lot of profanity being used after the game. DeMarcus Lawrence was asked again, because it came up with Mike McCarthy this week about being 5.5-point underdogs, and he said, we're no one's underdogs. But Lawrence said, sometimes you wish you could bet in Vegas. Now, be careful there. That one player is banned for the year because of that. He said, when MFers throwing you alley-oops like this, you don't want to pass on it.
Easy money.
Yeah, easy money. Bet on these Cowboys, and the Cowboys were surprised that the Rams were favored by 5.5. The Cowboys really sort of ended up winning that game with ease. And Ed, at the end of that game, Cowboys were just pinning their ears back, and we've seen other quarterbacks look like that, but Stafford's taken a lot of shots, and he was not looking good. He was looking battered at the end of that. And while Micah Parsons deserves a lot of credit, Ed, Dorrance Armstrong, who I mentioned earlier, Odigizua, Tristan Hill even. You and I have had discussions with even going back to Tristan Hill's college coaches. We didn't know how that was going to work out. There really seems to be sort of a galvanizing effect on this team right now, and I think the defense loves that they're being depended on to win these games, and I think they've lived up to it. And I guess if you were going to nitpick this game, you would just say, well, Diggs did what he's done a lot. He's certainly capable of making huge plays, but he's also capable of giving up a lot of yards. And he gave up a long touchdown to Kupp today, and then a long pass to another Rams wide receiver,
Tutu Atwell,
who was I think is one of his first catches of his career.
It was his first catch, yeah. And those two plays accounted for 40% of the Rams' total offense today. So not a great moment for Trayvon Diggs on either one of those plays. But yeah, it's really, and let's put this into the proper context of how dominant they were up front. And we expected that. The Rams were in a horrible position. They were coming off a game against San Francisco on Monday Night Football that they had to play on the road. As we said, one of the most physical teams in football. They're coming off that game. They have to travel back home. Then they have to play the Cowboys on a short week. And the Cowboys, for the second week in a row, are facing a team on its third different starting center, as the Rams were today. Same with Washington last week. The Rams, who played one group of 5 starting offensive linemen all year last year when they went to the Super Bowl. We're playing their 5th different combination in as many games today. They've had 9 different offensive linemen play in their games to this point, and Matthew Stafford was better protected in Detroit than he's been protected this season in Los Angeles. But the Cowboys have you take advantage of the opportunities given you, and they certainly did. I mean, I'm looking at these numbers, Matt, and I got this chart in front of me. I requested it from my research colleagues at ESPN. Takeaways, pressure, sacks. Listen to this. Week 1, Tampa Bay, 1 takeaway, 10 pressures, 2 sacks. Week 2, Cincinnati, 0 takeaways, 15 pressures, 6 sacks. Week 3 at the Giants, 1 takeaway, 24 pressures, 5 sacks. Washington, 2 takeaways, 16 pressures, 2 sacks. Today against the Rams, 3 takeaways, 20 pressures, 5 sacks. So in 2 of the last 3 games, they've had at least 20 pressures and at least 5 sacks. Now, looking ahead a little bit, I think it's going to be a really interesting matchup with the Eagles. The Eagles are a very unconventional offense. They're more like a college offense with the RPO game with Jalen Hurts and his ability to run the football. The Cowboys are going to need Micah Parsons to be totally healthy if they're going to take care of Jalen Hurts next week. And I think that's going to be a dicey situation that we'll monitor all week, just like Dak's thumb.
Yeah, I think you're right. And sometimes you can play on adrenaline, and then they'll have to it's going to be hard to keep him out of that game. I do think he'll play. I think we'll have to see how effective he is. And I love hearing all the soft tissue talk. Soft tissue. By the way, did you say, I wanted to circle back to a stat I think I either saw you tweet or say, that is the most pressures in a game that Matt Stafford has faced, or the second most? Like, we're talking about in his career. What was that one that you had on Matthew Stafford?
Matt Stafford was pressured 20 times by the Cowboys. That's tied for the second most in his entire career, not just with the Rams, including his long tenure with the futile Detroit football Lions. I mean, what they're doing is really unprecedented. They've got 20 sacks already this year through 5 games. That's tied for the 4th most since 1970 for the Cowboys. The most that they've had after 5 games has been 24. They did that twice in 85 and 87. And then the only other time they had more was in 1977. They had 21. But, I mean, you look at what the defense has done, and they've given up, 19 points in the opener, then 17 the next week, then 16, and now 2 weeks in a row, the opponent has scored a total of 10 points against them.
Yeah, it's been dominant, and they needed it to be like this, and it has. And Cooper Rush continues to, not turn it over. In the to that point, Ed, if you're going to be like Tyler Smith, and I think he's doing a lot of the good things, but if you get called for a hold, and you still give up a sack, and you give up a strip sack, go ahead and jump on the ball. And he did that, okay? So there was a positive. There was a very big positive that happened
Even
on that
in his
play.
worst reps, there's been a positive.
He did a good job pouncing on
recovering fumbles.
That's right. All right, Ed and I have more, and we're going to get to Glenn Stretch Smith with his stretch plays, and, of course, he'll give his grades out. Boy, there's one player for the Cowboys that he came out today that he's very angry with. And for the most part, it was a very jubilant locker room. Jerry's happy. But there's one player that did something that has drawn the ire of one Glenn Stretch Smith. So we'll share that with you in a moment. I did want to remind you, Lakeside Roofing, another one of our great sponsors, family-owned, full-service roofing company serving the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And highest quality workmanship. It's Lakeside Roofing Company, and the website is lakesideroofco.com. That's lakesideroofco.com. And the great thing about both Marable Homes and Lakeside Roofing is, I mean, a lot of times with roofing companies or building, you got all your subcontractors, you got people, and they don't always know who's at your house. Like, everybody they send out is like somebody they know their families and they're like really close to, and it's part of this huge family. It's one of the reasons they end up, after they build these homes and do these roofs, that they end up being close to the people. And so these relationships continue on. And Ed, that's the reason they get to keep building like the next home. You know, Ed, you probably do need a third home. And
this is like what we've created here at the Doomsday Podcast, a family relationship between me, you, Stretch, Frito.
Yeah.
What do you say?
It's a very volatile. I think it's more volatile than the Marable Holmes relationship, but I think it's a good one, and it stood the test of time.
Marable Holmes builds homes like Dan Quinn builds defenses.
That's right. Not on sand, but on rock. Okay, it's like a biblical type thing. I like that. I like a Dan Quinn reference. All right, it is time to hear from our resident scout and coach and also TV star, Glenn Stretch Smith with Stretch Plays. Joining us now on the Marable Holmes hotline, it is Glenn Stretch Smith for Stretch Plays. And Stretch, this was another really nice win for the Cowboys, and they get it done, and I think we need to start on the defensive side of the football. It's another dominant performance, and quite honestly, Stretch, I mean, you know, the rushing yards are pretty much nothing for the Rams, and other than two big plays in the passing game, they didn't really do anything, and they still, only were able to get 10 points, and by the end of the game, Stafford was in a bad way. They had impacted him so much. This Stretch, I think we may be looking at, if not the best defense in the NFL, well, a top 2 or 3 defense now.
What I like is not only does the defensive staff and the defensive players know it, but so does the offensive coordinator. He knows it. He's calling a game knowing I can rely on my defense. I know I can rely on the defense. I started thinking about before we got on here, it took 2 absolutely perfect by Sean McVay into the perfect defense, so he had to absolutely guess with what Dallas was going to do. He throws a perfect throw on the shallow cross, Cup makes a perfect catch, and they score a touchdown. If not for that, they don't score a touchdown. And then he makes a nice play-action call, safety bites up, and they go over the top on the post. But other than that, which that's going to happen, I mean, what Dallas is doing defensively is just saying, we're fixing to beat you down. We're going to impose our will defensively. And to me, that's a very infectious thing. It's infectious because you got a defensive starter blocking a punt. You got guys flying around the field on the defensive side of the ball. You got a player in Micah Parsons who's got a soft tissue injury who will not take himself out of the game. He wants in the game knowing he affects the game. He affects how they shift or turn the protection. He affects if they're going to chip and send it back out his way. He affects the game. He knows that. Now he's got other players that are feeding off that same mentality. And now the whole team is doing it. So what Dallas has done defensively is amazing. And I'm telling you, what Dan Quinn has done, what Harris has done with the secondary, coaching the secondary. I mean, Anthony Brown doesn't even look like the same player that he was 2 years ago. He's playing with confidence. He's doing some things that you want to see a corner do, undercutting routes, breaking on balls. To me, defensively, that is the complete story of what you just saw. And I think it really is one of those things that if they'll just keep playing to their strength, I mean, who's going to beat this team? I mean, I'm asking you that. You're going to say, well, Philadelphia next week, great. We won't have to wait long to see that. But I'm telling you, with what Dallas can do defensively, with what they're doing schematically, it's the first time I've seen them line up in some bare front where they cover the center and both guards. They're stunting and stemming guys around. Tristan Hill making big plays in the backfield. Odigizua. You got guys that everybody doesn't even know really were starters, or guys that it doesn't matter if they are or aren't starters. It's the fact that they're going out and they are playing their ass off for a defensive coordinator who they obviously like and who they believe in, and now the entire organization believes in.
Well, I think it's right, and when the decision making, they know who they are. I mean, this team has a huge identity through its defense, and quite honestly, as Dak gets ready to come back, and apparently he told people after the game that there are like big changes almost every day with him in a good way. So I think he's getting closer to feeling like he could play. I think they need to keep a lot of this mentality that has made them successful. Now, Stretch is via phone. He's headed to WFAA downtown Dallas to do his TV, and that's why you can hear him driving that big pickup truck as it drives all the way from Fort Worth area to Dallas. Now, Stretch, you mentioned some of the guys. Odigizua was really good. Dorrance Armstrong. I mean, there's a guy, Stretch. I'll start there. And you can give the defensive line a grade, but they signed Dorrance, and then we made a real big deal of them not signing Gregory. Gregory has been banged up and not able to play, where he ended up in Denver. And Dorrance, who nobody made a big deal at all about them re-signing Dorrance, he's become a huge part of the defense. So that entire defensive line, how would you assess their work after this one?
Well, I mean, again, I'm gonna tell you that to me, I'm giving the entire defense an A. And we can sit here and go over it. You watch Vander Esch in coverage; they run empty, and he goes out and covers the back one-on-one. Defensive line putting pressure on guys. I mean, we can go right down, and if you want to call roll, I'm fine with all that. But I'm telling you, Matt, it's an A for the entire defense and an A for how they play, what they do, defensive line getting after it, linebackers flying around, and the secondary playing with confidence. I mean, it is amazing to me that it's that really infectious, and it starts with, like you're saying, I mean, a defensive line who is getting after it, then a defensive line who's keeping guys up, Vander Esch, keeping guys off. Boy, it could go make plays, and keeping pressure on the quarterback, and that makes your secondary look that much better. So, I mean, I'm saying A, give the whole defense a damn A. Give the equipment guys an A for handing out the defensive equipment, for crying out loud.
Can we give the road fans an A for their participation today? Cowboys fans taking over at SoFi Stadium.
100%, and you can hear it. Wow, was it loud on TV? I mean, hey, that's what I'm saying. You got a defense who's ignited a fan base. I mean, think about that. If people say, it's not fun football to watch, it's kind of ugly. I took a nap in the third quarter. Man, if you're napping on this defense, you got no pulse. Get a damn Mountain Dew and stay up.
Special teams were interesting. That the new snapper, they had a little issue there. I wonder if that was going to come back to haunt them. It didn't. But they had a botched snap situation because he went early on that. Rams got him with a fake punt, and then earlier than that, of course, the Cowboys get the block punt with Dorrance coming in there on the block punt. And so you said it earlier. That's an aspect of the game. So I would think out of all of the special teams, would that be about a B+, would you say, given the fact they gave up
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, when you think about it, they made plays in the game. All other teams and facets of the game are having to make plays when your starting quarterback's out, and they realize that they're making plays. Absolutely, a B, and I'm going to give Bones an A because he cleaned his wristbands. You see how white they were today? They'll give him an A. He's got some forms going.
Bones Fossil. I love that they had that Dixon throw the ball like Johnny Hecker used to do. That was Fossil's deal. He loved to throw that ball, and then they did it. That was Joe D. Camillus over there hanging out. You know, those were two guys we know, Bones and Joe D. On the offensive side of the ball, let's start with the O-line. Tyler Smith, who really has done a good job this year being pressed into duty at left tackle, certainly against one of the great, if probably the best defensive player in the league, had his struggles over on the left side, yet was a big part of them piling up over 160 yards rushing. Start with Tyler Smith at left tackle, and then give me your overall assessment of this O-line today.
Yeah, I mean, he struggled a little bit, and you're going to struggle versus Donald. I mean, that's, again, that is a tough position for him to be in. Got a couple holding calls, but you know what? I'm gonna say that this was a great learning experience for him. He got the lineup against him. Great job by the Rams and their defensive staff saying, hey, you know what? We're gonna put our best guy against your rookie. And if the Cowboys don't, send somebody that way, put the tight end over there, chip the back that way, we'll expose him a little bit, and they did that. I mean, that's part of what Raheem Morris did, and he got to give him a little credit. I mean, but when you look at overall the job that he did and the experience that he's gaining, think about how that's going to help him down the road. Think about how you're going to look at this film and know you played against the best that there is, and yeah, you had some holding calls. You know what you got to work on. To me, I mean, I give the offensive line a B. They ran the ball in some tough situations. I give the tight ends a B. I hated that Hendershot had the holding in that critical situation. But again, guys, they're young players are having to kind of learn on the job, and I think that's something that up front is going to help them in the long run, especially when they get their starting quarterback back.
All right, and it does look like they're closing in on that. Glenn Stretch Smith joining us during Stretch Plays. Stretch, it was interesting. During the game, they were calling for more touches for Pollard, especially with that 57-yard run. And soon after that, of course, Cooper Rush, I don't know how he held onto that ball. He gets blown up on a nickel blitz. I think that was Jalen Ramsey who came running in there, and that should have been Pollard picking that block up. So I do think that reminds us how good Zeke is at picking up the blitz and protecting the quarterback. But how would you grade out the two running backs?
Yeah, I thought they ran the ball hard. I thought they, hang on to the ball. They catch the ball well out of the backfield. Yes, I hated that Pollard did not see that and about got his quarterback killed. Hopefully he learns from that. Like you said, that's what makes Zeke the guy, is he is able to understand the protection side of the game, understand how to pick up those blitzes, how to scan with your head. Sometimes you got to go inside out with your head. You got to do it with the speed of the game. It's not going to happen in practice. You can't emulate that speed. And so, seeing that, you hope that Pollard gets better. But I still say, Zeke hammered in there a few times, and that's what you got to see on those 3rd and 1s, 3rd and 2s, bow your neck and go hammered in there and get that first down, because a lot of times it's not going to be pretty, but they do have the 1-2 punch, and the fact that Pollard ran through the safety making the play and scores on the 57-yard touchdown, that really is Zeke had the same opportunity later in the game. He couldn't make the safety miss. So those are the two things that you kind of got to play on both of those backs. But I thought they overall did a heck of a job, and had Pollard, they would have got an A had Pollard not let Jalen Ramsey come off the short side and about to get a turnover right there with the big hit on Cooper Rush. I'm giving the backs a B.
Okay, and lastly, the wide receiver, CeeDee Lamb, on what should have been just I guess the guy did make a nice play on the ball, but he catches the ball for what would have been a key first down and then is unable to complete that catch over there on the sideline. And then, of course, a big drop by Gallup. They did make some plays in the passing game, but what did you feel like the wide receivers did overall?
Well, again, I mean, that ball's not coming with the same velocity that normally the ball would come with. But you've got to make those catches in those critical situations. I tell you the thing that bothered me more than anything, and I'm going to, some people don't like what I say. When it was 3rd and 12, and CeeDee Lamb had an opportunity, caught the slant. And the mentality has always been, when you see two defenders, you split two defenders. It's 3rd and 12, and you got a chance to put the game away, and you take your ass to the ground. I mean, it was borderline coward. You're the number one receiver. Catch the slant and hit your ass up in there like you got a pair. That's what you better do, or there's no way that I could pay the guy the kind of money he wants. And I get it. It's big league ball, and you're going to take a shot. But at that point of the game, you got to stick that ball in there and get that first down. It bothered me big time. Now, he's got to quit dropping the ball, but more than that, he's got to show me he's got a pair.
Wow. All right. Well, that sounds like the two receivers got somewhere in the neighborhood of a B or B minus, but that really is trending toward like about a D for CeeDee Lamb for lack of stones, according to Stretch. Stretch, boy, people look forward to this. We appreciate it, and this sets up big game against the Eagles. And you talk about an early, great divisional matchup, 5-0 versus 4-1. So kind of like you said, this is a great opportunity this is kind of put up or shut up time. Let me ask you, I just want your gut reaction to this. If you thought Dak was relatively healthy, maybe not perfect, but good enough to go play, would you have a tendency to go ahead and get him in there? Or would you have a tendency to go, hey, why mess with a good thing? Let's give Dak one more week, and let's go in there and try to play the Eagles with Cooper Rush.
Yeah, I mean, you paid him all the money. He's the guy that wanted all the money. He's the guy that, came out and said, hey, I'm an elite quarterback. Right now, sit your ass down and wait another week. You can come back when they play Detroit, followed by Chicago. In my mind, I'll bet you, if you cut through all the BS, don't tell me about all the braces and all the holding softballs and all that other BS. The bottom line is, I'll bet you he knows. You know what? I'm going to shoot for this game over here. I'm going to shoot for coming back against Detroit, followed by Chicago. They're 4-0 right now. I mean, I don't know how you could mess with that. I don't know how you can mess with the play calling, with what's going on. I mean, I think you got to give this young man another opportunity and let him keep, let him get out there. We know Dak's not 100%. He knows he's not 100%. Wait till he's 100%, because guess what? It ain't going to be easy. He set out all the preseason. I don't care. We've talked about this. I don't care about dual practices and all that. He's not seen the speed of the game. It's going to take him a little while. I'm not sure this is the game that I want to give him that little while in.
All right. I like it. I like the reasoning, and I think it's some very fair points, and I would like to see you make those on WFAA Channel 8. I'm just only sad tonight we couldn't do this via Zoom. and then put it out there on Facebook Live, because the people really eat that up when they get to see the two of us and just kind of see us spar back and forth. Stretch, have a great night on TV, and we look forward to talking to you next week after a huge divisional matchup against those Philadelphia Eagles. Thank you, sir, and good night.
Hey, you keep your giggling ass up till 10:30 and watch it on TV. You'll hear me say it. See you later, Mosley.
There he goes. Glenn Stretch Smith in Stretch Plays. All right, Ed, and yeah, I thought that was interesting at the end of what Stretch was upset with, Ed, is the fact that he didn't like how CeeDee Lamb went to the ground when he had a chance to get that first down late. He thought he could have split the defenders, and he wanted to kind of put his nose in there. And quite honestly, in that moment, I didn't really think that. But that was an offensive play to Stretch. Now, he also had he had a drop today over on the sideline, although the guy made a pretty nice play, but it looked like a certain catch, and the ball ends up coming out of there. And then Michael Gallup had a bad drop. So on a day that a lot of things went right, there were some things that went wrong, including giving up. I thought that was kind of a comical moment, but also a scary moment for Cowboys, is when the Rams used, for years, Bones Fossil was coaching the Rams, and that Johnny Hecker was a great passer, and they would throw, and if they didn't do like the same thing, Dixon throws it out to the punt protector, and the guy runs a nice little route, and it goes for a first down. So I thought
on their own 25.
Yeah, yes, exactly. It was a very gutsy call, and I thought that was some interesting gamesmanship between the Cowboys doing some interesting things with the block punt with Bones Fossil, and then, of course, the Rams, Ed, having an old friend of ours, Joe DeCamillis, the son-in-law of the late, great Dan Reeves. He's the special teams coach for the Rams, and so I thought there was some interesting special teams back and forth there.
I'm surprised Bones didn't try to get another one in at the end of the game somehow to make sure he came out up 2-1. But the Rams were just a desperate team. They've scored a total of 80 points this year. That's 16 a game. That's the fifth fewest at this point in the season by a defending Super Bowl champion, and the other four teams all missed the playoffs. So that's kind of where the Rams are headed. I mean, this was the first time the Cowboys had ever beaten a Sean McVay team, and they did it, somewhat decisively. The Rams leading, only briefly in the game.
That's what you do, Ed, when you've got a kind of a wounded team, down some wide receivers, and you take full advantage of it. And the Cowboys did dispose of them, and ends up being a great win. And that sets up this matchup that we've already hit on a little bit. But you're right, the Eagles have known as a really, really good offensive line. This offensive line for the Rams was compromised. Same with the Bengals. Same with the Giants. I mean, if you really go down the line, other than that first game.
Even Tampa Bay, because they lost their left tackle during the game. And remember, Tom Brady had lost his entire, interior offensive line, the center and both starting guards, since the end of the previous season. So this will be a real test for this defensive line, and who knows what kind of condition Micah Parsons is going to be in. And I thought it was interesting going into this game that Dallas ranked first in the NFL in pass rush win rate. And Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence were the only two players from the same team among edge rushers who both ranked in the top 10. And you saw how that played out today. They were both fairly dominant at different times in the game.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think it's going to be a fascinating game for a lot of reasons. It'll be a crazy night crowd up in Philadelphia. The Eagles have not lost. They're the only undefeated team in the NFL. They went into today's game against the Cardinals, leading the NFL in takeaways and sacks. The Cowboys may now have surpassed them, but they're good on defense like the Cowboys are good on defense in making those game-wrecking type of plays. And, the Cowboys have been dominant in this division. And the most dominant player in the division since 2016 has been Dak Prescott. and maybe this will be the week that they get him back. And the Cowboys have won 8 straight NFC East games. That's the longest winning streak by any one team in their division in the NFL right now.
Yeah, it's that is kind of remarkable. And the other shocking thing, Ed, is what the Giants did to the Packers over in London. Do you ever get caught off guard on those London games, and you're getting reports of a game like at a weird hour?
You forget that it's even taking place?
For me, it's like when I'm at church at like whatever time in Sunday school, I'm just like, wait, what are they doing? Why is there...
Ordinarily, the London games are forgettable because they're never good matchups. But this was a good matchup because it was the first time that any of the games in London featured 2 teams with winning records. And, there's a Green Bay's first appearance over there because I think they're the last holdout. They're the last team to play in London in the entire NFL, number 32. They didn't want to give up a home game because it's worth $15 million to the local economy. But finally, the Packers played over there and got beat. So the NFC is an interesting place right now. Who would have thought the NFC East, after the laughingstock that it was last year, even when they did get 2 teams in the playoffs, the Cowboys and the Eagles, who would have thought that you'd have, 3 of the 4 teams would be 4-1 or better?
It is remarkable. And the Commanders had a chance. Commanders were down there right at the goal line and could not get that thing done, and Wentz threw an interception, or they could have at least been at like 2-3. It's funny to imagine, when I went to Paris recently, or Italy, wherever it was, I think it was at one point I had to prove that I was vaccinated, of course, to go over to those places. And I guess London is not asking for that anymore, or otherwise Aaron Rodgers would not have been able to go over there and play, Ed.
Well, it wouldn't matter. They would have lost it either way, I guess.
I guess so, but they also test for what's the other stuff he takes, like peyote or whatever. There's some of that stuff. If it helps you sleep, I would like to look into it. Anyway, there's some cocoa that I've been interested in, some CBD cocoa. All right, Ed, good work from you, and this was another fun one, and again, Marable Homes, thank you so much. Presenting sponsor, Blake Marable, Amy Marable, the whole Marable family, and then Lakeside Roofing. And then, Ed, it was interesting. I just think the Cowboys are on such a roll. I'd like to think it's only because of just the tremendous work that the 2 of us do, but I'm sure the Cowboys being on a roll helps. But I get a call during the week from Miller Lite. Hey, can we get back on? Do y'all have any room for us? And
there's plenty of room for front runners with big money.
All right.
Yeah,
come on.
We'll think about it.
We appreciate Miller Lite. I got to check with the Marables. This is a very they're kind of like me. They've got a lot of Baptist background. They may decline, but I'm going to try to convince them to let the Miller Lite folks join us. But Ed, it's been fun, and boy, the Cowboys continue on, and Jerry Jones talking about the jewelry. It was he is ecstatic, because I think, Ed, and this is the last thing we'll talk about, is he didn't think there was any way. Even the most optimistic guy, he's been very upfront about the fact that he believes Cooper Rush has exceeded his expectations. And the fact that they're sitting here at 4-1, even in Jerry's wildest dreams when they were 0-1, that this didn't exist. And so in a sense, this team, without his star quarterback, who they pay $40 million a year to, has not only survived, but flourished, and now they sit here 4-1 to go play a 5-0 Eagles team. So in I think some weird sense, Jerry is as proud and as excited at any point in any regular season I can remember in the past 10 years.
Yeah, well, when you, as a team, and Cooper Rush in particular, exceeds the expectations of the most wildly optimistic man in all of sports, you've really achieved something there. We've diminished all of his other accomplishments, so we should emphasize that one, I guess. But I think the Cowboys blew a big chance last year. We talked about the year Dak had, they were the number 1 scoring offense in the NFL, the number 1 offense based on yards. Dak threw a franchise record 37 touchdown passes in his first year back from a season-ending injury the previous season. The defense led the NFL in takeaways and defensive touchdowns, and they blew it. They lost in the first round at home in the playoffs. So now maybe Jerry's sensing this is another one of those opportunities, that I didn't think we could make it work like we have and win like they have for this long a period of time against two teams that were just in the Super Bowl last year and come out of this 4-1 going into Philadelphia, which is 5-0, the only record better than the Cowboys.
Yep. Winner of that game, in a lot of ways, has to come out thinking they could be the front runner in the NFC, and it's kind of shocking to think, but that is the way it looks. And of course, you lose to Philly, you still have a lot on the line in front of you, but a win would be enormous. There's so many storylines. Micah Parsons now enters the huge storyline that was already with Dak's thumb, and we'll see. If I had to bet right now, kind of like what I think Ed was saying, no Dak, but I would bet on Micah Parsons playing. But I would also bet on Micah Parsons maybe not practicing all week. I would bet on that being a game-time decision against the Eagles. So this is going to be an exciting week, the build-up, and we appreciate everybody who's a part of the Doomsday Podcast. For Ed Werder, for Mark Frito Friedman and Frito Nation Productions, the Greatest Cowboys Podcast bids you farewell. Good night, everybody.
You haven't heard about the McCrispy yet? Well, then, you probably haven't heard the sweet silence after the first crispy bite either. Go try it for yourself to hear the best nut sound you've ever heard.
Chapter 1. Wayfair welcomes you to the neighborhood. Our hero, Titus Burgess, ambled down the stylish street of an enchanting utopia. A woman waved from a chic lounger. "Welcome to the neighborhood," she said, "where Wayfair helps everyone create a home they love." Titus stared in awe. Bohemian Boulevard, Trendsetter Terrace, Mid-Century Circle.
Titus, you're reading the Wayfair catalog.
Oh, you'll love Chapter 2. Wayfair's fast and free shipping saves a potluck.
Wayfair, every style, every home.